I'm so happy because your mammy wouldn't want you to be around all those colored folks. If she knew that you was sitting in that meeting around all them dashikis and sandals, oh, she would have a fit, girl. Mm-mm. Oh, my life, I'll be waiting for you. Look how you do. Y'all, don't be mad. That's Lulu snoring. When I graduated from Buckley, my mother announced that father had left a little money for me, and I used mine to buy a little navy blue Volkswagen and a nose job. My nose, ... When I was a teenager, I always thought it was too broad and flat. So I found a plastic surgeon, Dr. Max Pegram, who agreed to make my nose smaller and more narrow. But he almost backed out when he discovered that I was the daughter of. In the end, he chose to do less than what I'd wanted. He told me it was my destiny to look like my father. Gee, thanks, Doc. Yeah. The Nat King Cole did have a honker, but then so do I. And my daddy. With my nose in bandages, I decided to get a summer job where no one could see me looking hideous. Y'all, pause. Y'all probably be mad at me, but I'm trying to tell you, for my 55th birthday, I'm going to get some work done to my face. Okay? Getting old hurts. I know some of you like, your inside is beautiful, Nay. Thank you. But being a person who is not afraid of plastic surgery, I think I'm going to get like a lower facelift or something like that. Because this got to go. With my nose in bandages, I decided to get a summer job where no one could see me looking hideous. No one sees telephone operators, right? I went to work again at a switchboard. It was one of my more interesting jobs. I answered the phones during lunchtime for several doctors' offices in Beverly Hills. I answered the phones for the Department of Mental Health, and my supervisor was a 6'4" okay, we can't say that. We could say transsexual, but they don't use trans. They don't say that word no more. Who had a personality somewhere between Auntie Mame and Minnie Pearl. When we sat down to decide about where I should go to college, my mom and I chose the University of Massachusetts at Amherst together. There was never any question that I was going to go to college somewhere else. UMass was a rather progressive, even a bit confrontational institution located in a gorgeous woodsy setting near the small historic town of Amherst. UMass was truly the first melting pot environment that I experienced. In 1968, it was already beginning to be one of the more diversified student bodies in the Northeast, although that wasn't saying much. But I was part of that whole generation that was raised to ask questions. I was taught to be curious, to ask why, to have my own opinion. When I was growing up, it was always okay to challenge stuff, to not be satisfied with the way things are just because that's the way they've always been. And UMass encouraged that kind of independent thinking. When I showed up, I was a mildly hippie-ish Californian. This buckskin fringe suede jacket that I wish I still had. And I was decked out in these little boots and little afro puffs. I just thought I was the cutest thing. I was making a fashion statement, but it wasn't saying I was black. At that point, I don't think I knew what black really was. Wait, so one of my supporters, I want to say, God dang, what's her name? Anyway, let me put the comment here. Okay, so this comment is from Diane Reeves Fan. I love the way Natalie tackles race and class in this book. Hancock Park was a pure flex. Why on earth would you choose to live in a hostile neighborhood and then leave your kids and nannies to fight your battles? The prep school is a different conversation. I understand Maria's decision. Unfortunately, there were very few prep schools that were integrated. As I was walking back to my dorm one morning, a tall, dark-skinned young man approached me wearing traditional African attire and sandals. The contrast between how he was dressed and how I was dressed could not have been more pronounced. I didn't have many black friends. How could I? There were maybe 6 black girls at Northfield. It was the same thing at Buckley. Cookie used to joke that we pretty much integrated any school we went to the moment we stepped on campus. It didn't seem much different when I got to UMass. There were approximately 200 black kids in the entire student body of 18,000. My sister would tell me stories about being a black girl at a PWI. I felt bad for the little girl. It could because my mouth ain't the best. Sometimes I have a propensity to say what I want and have no filter on it. That's why I stay in trouble. As I walked into the black students meeting one night, I was feeling more than a little apprehensive. I had no idea what to expect. The meeting was already in progress when I arrived, and everyone turned to look at me as I walked in. I felt very out of place, and the room was packed. It seemed as though the entire black population of UMass was in that basement. The speaker talked about his ideas for a Black Studies program and the need for more black faculty members. He said that the black student population at UMass had to act together to work for changes on the campus and to support the impoverished black communities nearby. This guy was not talking revolution or rebel rising. Well, maybe a little, but primarily he was making good sense. Most black students at UMass were from the ghettos in Roxbury and Springfield, and voices around me were murmuring in assent. You tell it, and amen, brother. By the end of the meeting, I knew that this was a group of people with whom I felt home. I'm so happy because your mammy wouldn't want you to be around all those colored folks. If she knew that you was sitting in that meeting around all them dashikis and sandals, she would have a fit, girl. Thus began one of the most important periods in my life. I became very conscious of my blackness from a pride point of view during my time at UMass. I had an opportunity to visit Africa many years later, and when we touched down on the continent in Johannesburg, a very strange and wonderful feeling came over me. It's an affirmation of your roots, of who you are. In Hancock Park, we lived like a wealthy white family would live, which is to say, like all of our neighbors. See, your mama fucked you up. Did she let you play with your black cousin on your pappy side? I tell you, that's a wake-up call. When somebody bump into you and say, get out of my way, nigga, you're not even going to understand. Nigga. Pause. Let's talk about the situations where the little boys don't even know that they black until the police pull them over. Remember that little boy that didn't understand what was happening? I don't know, sir. He was, oh my God, he was That little boy was like, I don't understand. Black police officers told him who he was. If he didn't know what color he was when them red lights flashed behind him, he knew what color he was by the time they whooped his ass. In Hancock Park, we lived like a wealthy white family would live, which is to say, like all of our neighbors. Before I got to UMass, I had never, to my knowledge, consciously experienced any racism that I recognized. In hindsight, maybe I didn't want to. Yeah. You're a Negro. You're a Negress child. Natalie Cole, you're Negress. You might say I grew up something akin to cultural schizophrenia. I could step away from that privileged Anglo world back into a black world at home, where there were relationships with the people who were still steeped in traditional black culture. I went from a totally all-white atmosphere to do this totally black experience that existed right in the middle of it. And it was seamless. I could go from one extreme to the other, from 0 to 100 in a matter of moments. When we were children, Carol and I got our hair done by this black lady we called Aunt Effie. She had a little salon in the basement of her house that you entered through a storm door in the back. There was also a man who did our hair sometimes. He was the first gay man that I ever met. But who knew about being gay then? I was like 8 or 9 years old. He and his lover were very good friends of my mother. What? Your mother allowed you to be around the gays but not the blacks? His lover was my mom's interior decorator and helped her put that house together. We called them Uncle Edward and Uncle Frank. They were sweet and loving people and made my experience with homosexuality very positive. I didn't realize how unique my upbringing had been till I got to college. Privilege had buffered me from the grittier aspects of black life in the United States. But once I started hanging out with other black students at UMass, my cultural education really began. These were people who lived in real neighborhoods. They lived near a store where people behind the counter knew you and would run a tab for you. Oh, God, yeah. But she didn't experience that with her mom's best friend over there in Chicago. Her mother is a mess. Like, she got her little secrets, but she don't want her daughter to be involved in nothing. Yeah, you can go over your Chicago play aunt house, but that's not how we do things here. Where we went shopping near Hancock Park, everyone kind of knew each other, but I couldn't walk in and say, I'll pay you next week when I see you. I began to make friends with many of the kids at the meeting, and they welcomed me warmly into their homes. I was amazed at other people's houses. First of all, they were small. That's the first thing you notice if you were raised in a big house like I was. At UMass, my black friends would eat that southern food all day. I was amazed. It's not that we didn't eat southern food in our house, especially during the holidays, but it was traditional or ceremonial at Christmas. Chitterlings were in the same league as fruitcake or sweet potato pie. I didn't realize till much later that my mother was sneaky when I was growing up. She's New England bred, but she would eat chitterlings secretly on the side and not out of a silver dish. Yeah, she probably ate it out of one of them whipped cream or country crock containers. Lulu! Shit! Why do you snore like that? A memorable highlight of my freshman year was meeting Dr. J, a.k.a. Julius Irving. basketball player extraordinaire.
That is a glory.